Hi, everybody. My name's Mark Annett, and I'm very excited to present to you a new mediation tool that I created called the Conflict Resolution Bento. Its origins come from a deep thinker, Yancey Strickler, who's the co-founder of Kickstarter. And in his new book, he talks about the fact that we humans focus too much on the me rather than on the us. And in order to create a more generous world, he created a new tool called the Bento. And it's a simple and elegant tool that has great applicability. I've used it with CEOs, I've used it with students, I've used it with employees in order to create a future together. In the bottom left-hand corner is the now me that represents your current situation. On the bottom right is the future me. That's where you would like to get to. In the top left-hand corner is the now us. Those are the people and the relationships that you have with them that you are trying to achieve a future together with. So that's the top right-hand corner is the future us. Now, this might seem like it could be a perfect tool for mediating a dispute. Unfortunately, it isn't. And it isn't because the people in the dispute, their priorities are not aligned. They are focusing on the me rather than the us. And to help you really understand why it doesn't work, I'm going to bring you back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if you remember, at the bottom of Maslow's pyramid are your physiological needs. These are your needs for food and shelter. If these needs are not being met, you can't do anything else. However, as soon as they are, you pop up into the safety needs for protection and financial security. And if you think about it, this is where a lot of disputes lie and what people are mediating over. They're mediating over money and their safety. Once safety is met, you move into love and belonging. Above that is esteem, and there are two important attributes. There's self-esteem and esteem of others. At the top of the pyramid is self-actualization, and that's where you're no longer focusing on just yourself. There's a recognition that there's a world beyond you. How this mapped to the bento under normal circumstances is your now me, that's predominantly taken up by focusing on your physiological needs, your safety needs. There's some love and belonging thrown in, but more of that is into the future me and the now us. Solidly into the future me is your concerns for self-esteem and the esteem of others. That takes up the priority of your now us activities. The future us, that is your self-actualization. That is your we focus. And that's where you're trying to get to in mediation, to get to a solution that's acceptable to everyone. The problem is when there's a conflict, there's a whole shift of the curve. And what happens is people can be so focused and so scared about meeting their physiological needs, keeping a roof over their head, and their safety needs, that they can't focus. They can't even see a future me because they're so overwhelmed and so insecure about those needs. Things like love and belonging and esteem, and especially self-actualization, have just been pushed off the curve. And the self-actualization is where you need to get to in mediation to be successful. So a lot of the mediation process is about shifting the curve back down. In a divorce, you can sometimes have a natural curve shifter when you talk about the children. And if you talk about the children, you start talking about the future and a future together. So that can shift the curve way down automatically so that you can potentially move forward and build from there. Now, not every divorce has children, and civil disputes typically don't have children. So you need another shifter. And what I've created is the shifter by focusing in and getting stability in the past. Because if people can understand their past and have security in their past, then their now is more secure, and they can begin to see a future me. So that's the whole goal of finding a path that is secure to create a more stable now me so that you can move through the mediation process. And the impact of mediation and the past, a lot of that work comes from some excellent article by Professor Carrie Mankomeno, Remembrance of Things Past. And I just want to highlight 3 things from that article. The first is that the past is essential to justice and it can't be banished from the past. Sorry, it can't be banished from the mediation process. The other thing that's important to remember is if you're using this tool is that there are likely to be many pasts, just like there are likely to be many futures. And the parties don't necessarily have to agree on the past, the specific past, although that's great if they can. But sometimes if a individual who is has real concerns about safety and security can at least find some stability in a past that they remember, then they can move forward. The third thing that I want to point out is that the mediation must be accountable to different constituencies, including those inside and outside of the mediation process. And the beautiful thing is this is built right into the conflict resolution bento. The premise of the conflict resolution bento is that you are not your conflict. Your conflict is only a small part of you. Similarly, neither is your conflictee. They are not the only us that's involved. They might be a barrier right now to accessing the other important relations to you, but the other important relationships are your family and friends, your church, your employers, your pet, anyone that you want to have a future together with. The goal of the mediation process is to hopefully move your conflict into the past, and then hopefully it'll completely fade with time. Similarly, you want to move your conflictee into the past, and whether or not your conflictee is in your new now us is what the mediation is going to decide. However, what I do counsel people in terms of doing this is you never know what's going to happen. And that person who once was a conflictee will potentially be a part of your future again. And I try and have people just imagine that 10 years from now, they're on a plane flight. And unbeknownst to them, their former conflictee is in the seat next to them. And how you don't want that to be a contentious 5-hour flight. So the goal within this mediation is to at least get to the point where that 5-hour flight years from now is not going to be contentious by a solution that is discovered. So that's the overall process. Here's what the tool actually looks like. Again, it's 6 boxes on a piece of paper that people fill out by hand. There are 2 boxes for the now me. The bottom box is designed, the smaller bottom box is designed for people to put their conflict. But if the conflict is so overwhelming that they need to document it in the bigger box, they should go ahead and do it. In the now us box, again, there's 2 boxes. The smaller box, central box, is the conflict because it's central to what the process is going to. With the past, people are looking to describe a moment of stability in the relationship with their conflictee in the past. And if they can think of that moment of stability and document that, then they can be more secure in their present circumstances so that they can craft a future me that they want to achieve and a future us with the people that are important to them, which may or may not involve their former conflictee, but they should always keep in mind the 5-hour flight that they don't want to be contentious in the future. The way you can use the tool, there's 3 different ways. You can use it as a pre-mediation tool where you send it to the individuals and they fill it out on their own. You might bring it into the one-on-one and talk about it so that you can work with the goals. So that's the first method. The other method is you can use it as a reset if the mediation process is breaking down. So if people are if people are hyper concerned about safety needs and the mediation process isn't going anywhere, you could pull it out, and then you don't want to do the whole thing in terms of, because it might derail the process, but just bring it out and see if you can get an agreement on the past together. And if you can get an agreement on the past, then you can very often restart and now talk about the now me in a less threatening situation, and then move into the future. The third way that it can be used is it can actually be as a tool to drive the mediation. You can bring it right into the session. You can walk through all of the steps from looking at the past, creating a now, to creating a future. So I thank you very much for being allowed to present this tool to you. If you have any questions and you're interested in more about it, here's my contact information. So please feel free to reach out to me.